welcome to or back to my channel. My name is Lauren and this is Intuitive Reading. Today we are going to do my March wrap-up. So I had a pretty good reading month in March. I'm pretty happy with it. I had 8 4-star books, 1 5-star book, 1 3-star book, 1 nonfiction book, which I didn't rate, and then I had 1 DNF. I'm going to talk about the DNF first just to get that out of the way, and then we will move on to the other books. So the first book that I had to talk about is the DNF. Sorry about that. So the first book I have to talk about was the DNF that I had, and it was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle, I think is the name. So I tried this book. I was going to read it for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge. Prompt for March was time. So I thought this would be perfect since time is in the title, and I've never read this book before. But to be honest, I was kind of lost. I didn't get that far into it. I want to say I read like the first maybe 4 or 5 chapters, and I was kind of lost as to what was going on. And there was some content in here I just was not here for. So I DNF'd this pretty early on, and I'm not gonna pick it up again. I'm just gonna unhaul this book. To follow that up on a happier note, I am going to talk about the 5-star book that I read for this month, and that was The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. This is a popular book that I have seen all over YouTube, and since it was middle grade March, I did read this book, and you'll see a lot of the books I talk about this month were from middle grade March. I did not follow any of the prompts for middle grade March. My goal was just to read as many middle grade books as I could. But back to this. So this book was so good. I really enjoyed this book, and this was about a girl named Ada, and she is 10 years old. She has a club foot. She's born with a club foot, and her mother hides her away, and she makes her feel really ashamed about it and everything. And her mother basically doesn't let her leave the house, and she has a younger brother who goes to school and everything, and the mother treats him really good and treats Ada really bad. So trigger warning for this, because that stuff is mentioned and it's kind of hard to read about. So trigger warning for like child abuse, I guess. But there are parts of this that are very hard to read about, but it also does have a happy ending. So there is that. This book does give you all the feels. But basically the war comes to London, and a lot of the children are sent away because of the bombing and stuff like that. They're sent away to the countryside. And that's what happens to Ada and her brother. They are sent away to the countryside with a bunch of other children, and they're sent to live with this woman who doesn't really want children, but she agrees to take them, and the story kind of goes on from there. They end up really liking staying with her, and she really warms up to them and everything. And it's a really heartwarming story, and I highly recommend it. I did not think I was going to like it as much as I did, but it just gave me all the feels, and I really loved it. The next book I read was Hatchet by Gary Paulson. I had never read this book before either, but I have heard Amanda over at Book Lover Amanda talk about this book, so I was really interested in hearing about it because she's talked a lot about it and she really likes it. So I thought I would check it out. This is like a survival story. So the main character is Brian, and Brian is on his way to Canada to visit his father. His parents had gotten divorced about a year ago, and so he is on his way to visit his dad. And a series of events causes the plane to crash that he is on. And so he has to basically crash land the plane. My kid. And okay, sorry, interrupted again. Y'all, this is real life. So anyway, he finds himself stranded in the wilderness, and he has to survive on his own until he can be rescued. So I did enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars. It just wasn't a 5-star level for me personally. There were parts that kind of dragged a little bit, but overall I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it. The next book I finished, and I've been reading this one a while because I physically read it and it takes me forever to physically read books. So here we are. But I did start this a few months ago and I finally finished it this month. And that book is Ranger's Apprentice, The Ruins of Gorlin by John Flanagan. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. This is the beginning of a series, the Ranger's Apprentice series. And basically this story, we have Will, who is our main character, and he is an orphan along with some of his friends. And this was sort of reminiscent of Divergent in that they each have to become an apprentice of some sort. So Will becomes a ranger's apprentice because he's very good at going undetected and being sneaky and all of that. One of his friends becomes like a cook's apprentice. Another one of his friends goes to battle school to become a warrior. So they each kind of get different jobs. So Will's job is to be a ranger, and the rangers are kind of the protectors of the kingdom, and they usually have special skills of going undetected, which Will is really good at, like I said. So they fight the battles basically before the battles get to the people. And there's a battle brewing with Morgarath, who is the villain in the story. He's gathering his forces to attack the kingdom. So basically, this is about Will and his friends kind of in their adventures. It's a really good first book to the series, an introduction, and I cannot wait to continue in this and see what happens. The next book I have is called Beautiful Storm by Mandy Blake. This is the next book in the Unfailing Love series that I have been reading this year. This is book number 4. And this book is about Tori and Marcus. So Tori is a nurse, and she and her husband is a doctor. And one day she comes home and her husband says that he has found somebody else and he wants a divorce. And she's really caught off guard. And he basically gives her this house that's been handed down through the generations in his family. It's in a small town. She goes to this house. It's a cabin, actually. It's his family's cabin. So she goes to this cabin, and on the way there she has car trouble. And so she calls the like local mechanic when she gets into town. Bookmarks coming out. She calls the local mechanic when she gets into town, and that is Marcus. And Marcus, he is the caregiver for his siblings. He has like 4 or 5 siblings, and their mother is an addict, and so she's not able to care for his younger brothers and sisters. And so Marcus has taken that on himself, and he's a really good like caregiver to his brothers and sisters. And yeah, this was a really good book. I forgot to say this was by Mandy Blake. I don't know if I said that at the beginning of talking about this book, but anyway, yeah, so I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars as well, and I am looking forward to continuing on in this series. Sorry y'all, this video is kind of all over the place, but it is what it is. I have not filmed in a long time, and I'm kind of rusty, but I'm so glad to be back filming. I have really wanted to bring you guys some more content, so I'm really glad I could do that today, and we're just gonna go on with it. Okay, so the next book I'm gonna put here, because I read it as an audiobook. I do not have a physical copy, but this is the next book in a series of unfortunate events. This is book 2, The Reptile Room. Now, I had some reservations going into this book because I do not like reptiles. Reptiles freak me out, like snakes. No, I just can't do it. But I will say I did like this book, I think, more than the first one, which was shocking. So we are back with the Baudelaire children, and they go to live with an uncle, and he is a reptile expert. So they are able to learn all these things about reptiles, and they're able to help him do experiments and like help him take care of the reptiles. So there's obviously a series of unfortunate events that leads their uncle to pass away, and so they're trying to investigate his death and find out how it happened. And Count Olaf comes back into the picture. I won't say too much about why he returns or any of that, but I really enjoyed this one. This one, for some reason, I found a lot more interesting than the first book, even though I enjoyed the first book. I also gave this one 4 stars. So, oh, and I forgot to say, A Series of Unfortunate Events. These books are by Lemony Snicket. So the next book I have to talk about is The Boxcar Children, and this is the first book in the series. This is by Gertrude Chandler Warner, and I read these books years ago, back in the 90s, and I don't remember any of them, but I do remember this was a series that I really liked. So basically, I don't remember the kids' names, but there are 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and their parents die, and they kind of go from place to place, seeking like shelter and all of that, and they kind of move around. They do have a grandfather, but I have trouble understanding. I think they're like afraid to meet him. They don't know what he's going to be like. So they decide to just kind of go out on their own and try to survive by themselves. And they find this boxcar one day, and they try to make it their home. And they find dishes, and they sleep in like hay and all of this that they put in there. And the oldest boy goes out in search of work, and he gets hired by a local doctor to do kind of odd jobs around his house. and he provides them with food. And I'm trying to be kind of vague because I don't want to give anything too spoilery. But he does pay him and gives him some food. He does eventually tell him about his other siblings, and so he does get the other siblings involved in doing some of the chores so that they can get more money and food and all of that. The doctor does run across an ad in the paper stating that the grandfather is looking for them. And so anyway, it kind of goes on from there. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars as well, and I cannot wait to continue on in the series. The next book I'm going to talk about is Titanic, Book 1, Unsinkable. And I'm going to put a picture up here. For some reason, I cannot find my copy right now. But I did listen to this on audiobook as well. So this is like a middle grade series. And you follow 4 main characters who are children on this ship. And they come from 4 very different walks of life, and it was a good series. So I've read the first 2 books. The first one kind of introduces you to the characters and their backgrounds. We have Patty, who is a stowaway on the Titanic, and it talks about how he got there. We also have Sophie, who goes with her mother to a lot of rallies, and her mother is fighting for women's rights. And we have Juliana, who is really rich, and her father is kind of overbearing. And then we have Alfie, who is a steward, and his father works in the boiler room and helped get him a job on the Titanic. So it just basically talks about each of the 4, and then how their stories intertwine. I did give this first book 3 stars. It was good, but it just wasn't great. It wasn't over the top great. So I did give it 3 stories. I did 3 stories. 3 stars. I did give it 3 stars. I did enjoy it, but it was just okay. So the second book I have in that series is book number 2, Collision Course. And this continues the series. Basically in book number 2, the main characters find a suitcase in the like luggage room where all the luggage is on the ship, and one of them opens, and they basically find a bunch of Jack the Ripper memorabilia from like all of those cases. And so they think that whoever Jack the Ripper was is on board the ship. And so it's been like so many years since the last case of Jack the Ripper, like since he struck. And so they are determined that they're going to find out who this suitcase belongs to, and that will lead them to who Jack the Ripper is. I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed this one a little bit more than the first one. So that is that book. I do have book number 3 in this series, and I'm hoping to read that in April, since April is the month that the Titanic sank. I am hoping to read the 3rd book in April, closer to April 14th. So we'll see. Hopefully I'll get to that. The next book I read, I'm also going to put here on the screen. The next book is The Executioner and the Lady. and this was by Delina Taylor. Another great book by Delina Taylor. I have really been enjoying her books. I gave this 4 stars. This is about Lady Cheris, and she is sentenced to death for killing her uncle. Everyone believes she has killed her uncle, and she is kind of known in the town as being crazy. People think she's crazy, which she's really not, but that's just kind of a rumor. And Philip is the butcher's son, and he is also the executioner for the town. And he and Cheris grew up together, and he's always really liked her, but he's always felt like he was beneath her and that he didn't deserve her. So he is supposed to execute her, obviously, the next day, and he'll do basically anything to save her. So he devises this plan for them to run off, and it basically risks both their lives, and they would never be able to return to this town that they live in. And it just goes on from there. It's a really, really good story. I love her descriptions and the character depth. I'm just really enjoying her stories. So anyway, that was a really good one. And again, I gave that 4 stars. The next book that I read is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And this is by C.S. Lewis, of course. So if you don't know what happens in this story, this is about 4 siblings who go into a wardrobe, and on the other side of this wardrobe is this magical land called Narnia. And Narnia is full of magical creatures, and they go on these adventures. They meet the White Witch, they meet the lion Aslan, and they meet all kinds of other creatures along the way. So really enjoyed this book. This was a reread for me of this, and it's been a while since I read it, so I'm really glad I got to reread it. I did give this 4 stars. I think the first time I read it, I gave it 5 stars because it was my first time reading it. This time I gave it 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. There is magic in this, which I know at the beginning of the year I was kind of iffy about books with magic, but I think I've kind of learned to just use my discernment with it. And this book, I didn't really feel any type of way about the magic. Like, it didn't bother me at all. And there's not a lot of magic talked about in here, so I was fine with it. But 4 stars, and I really enjoyed this book. The next book I read is called The Chocolate Touch, and this is by Patrick Skeen Catling. This book was so cute, y'all. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't expect to like it as much. It's a shorter book, and so I was kind of like, I don't know. But this is kind of like a King Midas retelling a little bit. It's kind of based on that, like the Midas touch and everything turns to gold. This is sort of similar, but this is about this little boy named John Midas, and he is obsessed with eating chocolate. Chocolate is all he eats. And so, like, his parents are really frustrated because they want him to eat other things, not just chocolate. And I really liked how they handled it as well. They didn't say like chocolate is bad and you shouldn't eat so much chocolate and all of that, but they really talked about how, you know, everything in moderation, and that, you know, having too much of one thing is not good. And I really liked that. I'm an intuitive eater myself, and so I really, you know, just try to live with the philosophy of everything in moderation when it comes to food. So in this book, John acquires a magical gift, and it turns everything his lips touch into chocolate. And he kind of learns a lesson in this, and he sees that his parents are right, that you know, everything in moderation, and too much of a good thing is not always great. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I did give it 4 stars. This is a really cute, just fun, lighthearted book, and I highly recommend it. And that is all the books that I read in March. So I was really happy with that. It was a good reading month. I do want to say that I am planning on doing 2 reading vlogs for this month. And I'm hoping to do those within the next couple of weeks. Oh, also, I do want to tell you what books I read for my reading challenges for the year. So for the readathon for Christian fantasy from Morgan at Morgan's Endless Bookshelf, I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe from the Chronicles of Narnia, and I used this for a non-medieval world prompt. So I used that for that. I also used The Executioner and the Lady for the prompt of a non-magical fantasy. So that was 2 books I was able to use for that. And for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge, I am using A Wrinkle in Time. Even though I DNF'd this, I'm still going to count it for that because I did try to read it. Her prompt for March was time, and so this is A Wrinkle in Time, and so I'm using that for that prompt. So those were the only 2 challenges I was able to fulfill prompts for this month, which I'm fine with that. I am just using what I read each month to try to fulfill the prompts. Yeah, I know that I have not filmed a lot lately. This is my first video in a while, but I appreciate you guys being patient with me. Life is just kind of crazy right now, but I have definitely seen the Lord work in my life and everything that is going on, and I'm super grateful for that. And yeah, I just can't wait to get more content out this month. And thank you guys so much for watching and joining me, and I'll see you later. Bye.
you.